Please join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, now roll call.
City of Carmel IC, Councilmember Beach. Here. City of Delray Oaks, Mayor Elam.
Here.
City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell.
Here.
City of Marina, Councilmember Morton.
Here.
City of Monterey, Councilmember Selfridge. Monterey County Supervisor Potter. Monterey County Supervisor Salinas. Monterey County Supervisor Parker.
Here.
City of Pacific Grove, Mayor Camp.
Here.
City of Salinas, Mayor Spencer.
Here.
City of San City, Mayor Pendergrass. City of Seaside, Mayor Rubio.
Here.
City of Seaside, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby.
Here.
20th Congressional District, Sonia Arndt. 17th State Senate District, Nicole Charles. Here. 29th State Assembly District, Erica Parker. Here. University of California, Graham Bice.
Here.
California State University, Eduardo Ochoa.
Here.
Monterey Peninsula College, Vicky Nakamura. Here. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, Leslie Codian. Monterey Salinas Transit, Hunter Harbath. Transportation Agency of Monterey County, Debbie Hale.
Here.
United States Army, Colonel Fellinger. Corridor BRAC Office, Bill Collins. Marina Coast Water District, Director Moore.
Here.
Chair Elam, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Lena. Next, we have acknowledgements, announcements, and correspondence. We're adding to that portion of our agenda, adopting resolution acknowledging service of Monterey City Manager, Mr. Fred Muir. Everybody should have a copy of the resolution in front of them. So, Mike, let me turn it over to you for your comments first.
Yes, on that resolution, I'll probably move that first. That's a resolution that we want to put on the agenda under the consent agenda for adoption, after acknowledging the service of Monterey City Manager Fred Muir. He's been doing extraordinary service in Monterey Bay Peninsula for lots of years. There is a retirement party for Fred tonight. I was asked by the city managers of the Board of Reviews Authority Board, which is the remaining jurisdictional entity that can provide such an award for the work he did here, if we would consider that. And I know all of you have seen this, and so therefore, if I could, I'd like to read it into the record. I'd like to read it into the record. Whereas Fred Muir, Colonel, U.S. Army, retired, has served with honor and accolade to the benefit of the Monterey Bay Peninsula in varying professional positions and personal voluntary actions over the past 3 decades. And whereas Fred Muir graduated from Military Academy at West Point, served with distinction in the United States Army and overseas assignments in Germany, Vietnam, and Korea, and served as Director of Public Works and Housing at the former Fort Ord military installation before his 1986 retirement. And whereas Mr. Muir joined the City of Monterey in 1986 as Special Projects Manager, later became Public Works Director, and was appointed by the City Council to the position of City Manager in 1991, where he oversaw the development of the City of Monterey's neighborhood improvement, neighborhood policing, waterfront acquisition, Main Street tourism development, and historic preservation programs. And whereas Fred is known for his genteel, polite, restrained, behind-the-scenes diplomatic style
Louder, please.
of encouraging, wide-ranging council member expression of views and opinions. And whereas Mr. Muir was forced to delay his retirement date from the position of City of Monterey on 3 occasions, demonstrating the difficulty in replacing a legend in his own time. And whereas Fred Muir served as board member of the Association of Defense Communities for 10 years and as president in 2007, leading national efforts to strengthen partnerships between the Department of Defense and local communities which benefited the City of Monterey. And whereas in his capacity as Monterey City Manager, Mr. Muir has been lauded for his work in preserving the region's military presence, complimented for his support of former Fort Ord recovery programs, honored for developing City of Monterey, U.S. Army, and U.S. Navy cooperative agreements to increase mission effectiveness while reducing costs, and awarded the Ruth Greenland Public Official of the Year Award in 1997. Now, therefore, be it resolved by this body and the entire Monterey Bay community expresses their appreciation to Fred Muir for his extraordinary contributions to the reuse of the former Fort Ord and to the citizens of the county, wishing him every success in all future endeavors.
We'll be adding that to the consent agenda when we get to that portion. Just to add to what our executive officer said, I had the opportunity as chair to go back to Washington, D.C. as part of the Association of Defense Communities Conference. Watch the interaction. We have these communities from all over the country there in Washington. And watching the interaction, the respect given to Fred Muir. Fred Muir really is he's the founder of the public-private partnerships between the defense communities and the local communities. He started that. He's the pro. He's the #1 person in this country for doing that. So we all know what Fred's done locally with regard to helping Monterey, keeping us off the BRAC list, and so forth. But seeing his reputation and his impact on all the other defense communities across the nation, and his reputation is something I had no idea personally. I've been dealing with him for years, but seeing it in person was really an eye-opener for me. So, like we were talking about.
Yes, if I may, Chair, the other item under acknowledgments, announcements, and correspondence is a report on outcomes from the CSUMB FORA Base Reuse Implementation Colloquium. Almost every board member was able to participate in that event over the last several days. In fact, I think the City of Seaside, every single council member from the city participated in the colloquium. City of Marina had a quorum for almost the full duration.
I wrote them emails 10,000 times. Couldn't not be here.
I noticed that you guys made it a point to split up your tables a lot. But I think it was important that we had such a broad-based amount of participation, including the kind of questions that were asked of the panel members. On the screen over there, we just point out this the screen's over there as well. There's just quickly go through the kind of talent that we had on each of these panels. The first panel we talked about economic development innovation had a strong group of speakers that talked at length about the kind of opportunities and constraints that we face by being a former Port Org. There was an extraordinarily enlightening opening opening comment that was made by Eduardo Ochoa in introducing the panel that really set the stage for what the panel did, which was give everyone a really kind of snapshot of what it's like to understand regional economics associated with business clusters and how those things work. There were a number of very important items. There was a message from Larry Samuels about the need to rethink about building jobs, about the need for research and development, particularly UCFS, to step up to the plate, how that much more cooperative work and coordination with CSUMB was going to be critical. And Bud Colligan really talked quite a bit. Bud, who all of you know, is the founder of a number of major enterprises. And I jokingly said that Mr. Colligan could probably buy everyone in the room. But he was not just there because of his business success, but because he is a venture capitalist that invests in the kind of companies and invests in communities and their future. So we had quite a bit from that first panel. The second panel was about land development and job creation, and we heard from Peter Katz and Mary Jo Waite and Craig Seymour. Mary Jo Waite from the National Governors Association talked a lot about their programs and what was available through NGA and how they are leading the charge in thinking through about land development and job creation on a regional basis, on state basis, but how it affects us in this region was what you discussed. And of course, Peter Katz was participating in both days. I've heard from several people who participated in his lunchtime with experts comments that they really enjoyed the exchange they had with him there as well. And Craig Seymour, who's a consultant from RKG and Associates, has participated in about a dozen different redevelopment projects across the country and focused his attention on 4 different ones, how they might match up with how to do things in Port Org. The panel that dealt with blight removal, remediation, and economics was another high-quality panel. I kept thinking to myself that these are folks that do work not just in the nation, not just in the region, but almost every one of these folks do things internationally as well. And we heard a lot from Brad Guy, who's worked with us in the Army and CSUMB over the years, about some innovations. I think he even had his munching machine on the screen for several of the discussion about how some of those innovative technologies could be useful to us. Since Eduardo Ochoa announced the $30 million grant that would be used for building removal. And so that's another option that I think we'll be working with in the future. Jim Musbach, who was with Economic Planning Systems, who's done work for several of the jurisdictions here, including the University of California and FORA, and talked quite a bit about importance of the financial structure of blight removal and the need for markets to be able to create value so that the dollars are generated that builds for blight removal and makes it possible. That blight removal just doesn't happen all by itself. There needs to be a funding mechanism. He also came up with a few creative ideas and thoughts. In fact, all of the members of that panel thought it was a good idea to work cooperatively with CSUMB on how there might be ways of not just leveraging the initial capital there, but maybe matching FORA capital and or thinking about ways of reducing the impact of mobilization and demobilization when you're doing building removal so that we get to blight removal faster. So there's quite a lot of discussion. Lenny Siegel, who was a part of that panel, also talked about some innovative ways to make sure that in the future when we use the national monument, that it is safe for people to participate in, and talked about the technologies that are improving on a regular basis about explosives removal. The next panel on design guidelines, which was this morning, Victoria Beach led that panel, and Victoria might want to make a few comments on the outstanding panel that she led this morning.
But you did a good job.
Well, I will say that both Chuck Bull and Victor Dover had some really wonderful comments to talk about community building, about selling community versus privacy and exclusivity. They talked a lot about making sure that when you develop, you think through the ideas of what's there, who's there, and what's going on there. So that there's really a lot about placemaking that both Victor Dover and Charles Bull talked about in their comments earlier today. Some really important messages about not building in sprawl, but trying to build in ways that are compact, that take advantage of the tax benefits of increasing density on certain parcels, of how that helps communities to finance and fund their future. So there was a lot of positive comments from that I think everyone in the audience found interesting and intriguing. The panel 4 on design guidelines, panel 5 on form-based planning that this morning, Stephen Pellegrini and Doug Walker both talked a lot about the holistic idea of using regulating plans versus zoning to inform and structure how development patterns work. He talked a lot about compact growth planning in terms of walkability, placemaking. There was a lot of messages about walkability, placemaking, beautification, taking advantage of the region. Those are real important points, and the conversation that we heard about that was real important. In fact, Bill Leonard's talked about, I think he even had a little session afterwards talking about how using charrette formats that we've used 4 or 5 times here at least at Fort Ord. East Garrison has a major charrette that you can see on YouTube if you ever want to see the East Garrison one. The City of Marina did charrettes for the University Village project. The method is great. There are new ways to apply charrettes, and what Bill Leonard was talking about, building ways that people work together towards building a place and building development that makes sense. Doug Walker talked about the human decisions about planning places, and not just about the technical spaces. Talked about tools that can be used for visioning and visualization and interactivity and informative and being informative. So there were a lot of things that went through that, and that's what we heard from those guys earlier today. And then the last panel, panel 6, had a team of Doug Farr, Jim Meadows, and Luther Probst that talk about different experiences that they've had and other things that would relate to how the former Fort Ord could use the dedication of the National Monument, of the Fort Ord National Monument, as a way to create job opportunities and to build place for the former Fort Ord, and talked about the interrelationship between the National Monument and other open spaces and development, pointed to how things had worked at Lowry, how things had worked at the City of San Francisco. Luther Probst talked about the experiences he had with the Sonoran Institute, alerted us and warned us about relying on federal government funding. I think, I forgot what his term was, but I think it was the difference between a national monument and a national park. One said was, national park has a little bit of money and a national monument has none. So there were some important messages that we heard through the last couple of days. And I know that even though Victoria didn't have anything to add, but Eduardo and I think Victoria might have some comments there.
done a great job of summarizing the overall forum. I think it was great. And by the way, welcome to CSUMB, to the FORA board. I'm happy to host you here. I just wanted to highlight what I thought were like the key takeaways, at least for me, from this colloquium. It was interesting to me to see how many of the factors eventually boiled down to two fundamental objectives. And you could even boil it down to one, which seems to be to attract, create, and retain the creative class, the highly skilled workers that we're going to need in this region to remain economically vibrant in the 21st century information economy. And a lot of things flow out of that. I think the National Monument as a resource, as an amenity that group of people will find attractive is important. Having the kind of livable spaces and communities that those younger workers are finding attractive and are gravitating to. So you can use that as a sort of the North Star to guide everything we do, is what will attract and keep those people here. Related to that, as one mechanism of creating such a group is how can we get an innovation hub going around the university. And I found Mary Jo's presentation particularly instructive about that, about the elements that needed to come together for that to happen. So I also found the whole discussion of the new urbanism. I mean, it's stuff that I'd heard before, but never in such a concentrated, and systematic way. And it started me thinking that we may have to look at our own master plan on our campus and the fact that we have maybe too much acreage. How do
you're covering too much acreage.
So I think I hope that other people have went through the same experience. That is, that they've heard enough new ideas and intense enough setting and venue that it motivates you to rethink, to review, and reconsider some ideas that you might have thought were all settled already and it's old hat and this is the way it is. Maybe not. Maybe there are other ways. And again, as I said earlier, that's the first step toward the kind of dialogue and collaboration that allows people with different perspectives to find common ground to move forward. So I really, one of the tasks I think ahead of us for FORA and for everybody who participated is to think, okay, how do we move forward? How do we capitalize on this first step to keep the momentum going?
Thank you, sir. Good.
Well, I'll just say I am so appreciative to the university for putting this colloquium in exactly its proper framework, which is an elevated discussion about a neutral intellectual discussion about how to do this better. We learned, I think, that that a lot has changed, that we are lucky because so many tools have become available, so much thinking has advanced since the Base Reuse Plan that will help us with implementation. I love the line, I think it was Stefan Pellegrini, about do you want to download the latest operating system and install it, and the 128 times faster and all that stuff. This is, we're lucky to be poised in a position with all these great tools and thinking to help us jumpstart the implementation. And I will just say that, this is my background, but all the things that what we saw, which was so lovely, the North Star of attracting the creative class, is dovetailed with the physical environment, and that they are attracted by the physical environment, and that's what we're here to design and implement. And I think it's a perfect synergy between the intellectual environment and the physical environment that we're trying to attract. So I'm just very grateful for all the hard work that went into this. It was really a lovely collaboration between so many staff of two organizations, so many different contributors, and it's actually a nice allegory for cooperation and creativity going forward for going forward for implementation. So,
my observation, I think this is a great example of a partnership between CSUMB and FORA. I'd also like to say that probably about a year ago, we were in a meeting with President Eduardo Ochoa, and he mentioned the idea of a colloquium. He thought it would be a great idea to bring the various diverse groups together, set up a solid foundation of information we could all use in our discussions to come together and come up with some the right course for FORA. A lot of us sat around the table when he said that, and we were thinking, yeah, right. And what happens? So his leadership, his determination, and pushing his idea, it came to fruition. He deserves a lot of credit. Not only him, but the CSUMB staff. You saw what was out here. The food, the preparation, everything was done first class, one of the best ones I've seen. And that in conjunction with Mr. Michael Houlimar, our executive officer, the work he's done behind the scene, the FORA staff work hard. You saw him here early in the morning till late at night, yesterday and today. And then the PRAC committee deserves a lot of credit. The Program Reassessment Advisory Committee, subcommittee of FORA itself, they put in some long hours. One meeting started at 3:30 and lasted until 1:30 in the morning. And just one final comment, I was thinking about this. The one person that stands out and putting more work in probably than anybody else besides Dr. Ochoa, Victoria Beach. If you think about it, Victoria Beach is a councilman from Carmel by the Sea. She doesn't have any, there's no direct dog in this fight with regard to her. But the hours she and others on the FORA board put in, I mean, really, the amount of hours, professionalism, the attention to detail, the caring they care about FORA and what we're doing is inspirational. It really is. I mean, Del Rio, it affects me directly. Seaside, Marina, Monterey, yeah, but Carmel by the Sea, Pacific Grove, Sand City, but they're as much professional part of this team. And before I became part of the board, I used to think as, land use jurisdiction, well, what are these guys trying to tell us what to do? Well, I don't think FORA would be anywhere near the organization it is without these non-land use jurisdictions, the work they put forth. So I think they deserve a lot of credit. The three teams that put this on, if you can have a round of applause for them, please. Any other member of the, yes, please.
Thank you, Chair Edelin. I actually was listening to this, and it was truly wonderful to hear these incredible perspectives, both for my own city, and I suspect a lot of folks here were doing that, and as well for FORA, because I think there were a number of things here that give us yardsticks to measure the kinds of decisions we're going to be making in FORA. And I'd just like to hit a few of them that really struck me. I'm going to go perhaps a little bit of a step further to what it meant to me in terms of what's before us in FORA. One is for Don Culligan. He was giving some of these broad economic factors, and I heard a message that says, look, you guys aren't ranking very high on a number of very key indicators, so doing what we've always done and just more of it isn't the aspiration we need in terms of what we do on the former Fort Ord. And in fact, but he translated that vision into small, diversified, more or less spontaneous growth rather than bringing in, and so I was really surprised to hear the question about which of the Fortune 500 companies would you like to have come into our area. It's small organic growth he thought was the best fit. Now, other people may have different views on that, but it sounded to me like it was relevant and fit the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish. Mixed use, moderate high-rise. Peter Katz, in terms of value per acre rather than jobs, was a profound thought, and I think gives us a very different way of thinking about what really makes sense for us. We got to the question of, blight removal. One of the things that has been a catchphrase is build on blighted areas first. What I heard from folks who have a lot of experience is that blight removal is driven by economic growth and development. There wasn't any way developers were really going to embrace the blighted areas as a place to develop first without something to help them with the blight removal. And so it was a hard message that maybe we didn't particularly want to hear. When asked what's the magic solution to that, what I heard, the only phrase I heard that was new was exogenous capital. and which was a really cool term of saying federal funding. I've been personally looking for exogenous capital all my life. I haven't found it, but maybe there is some prospect of that. Quality of place, what's there, who's there, and what's going on struck me as a wonderful yardstick. The thing that did strike me as perhaps the most significant part of how we measure any development activities that are going on in our community has to do with smaller, more compact, denser, walkable kinds of neighborhoods with street life and that sense of place that we heard about. And as different issues come up, I hope we'll find a way to get those concepts into the dialogue rather than simply the pure consistency determination that says, okay, this open space for that one and this commercial development for that one, it must be okay. If we can go a little bit beyond that to say, are we getting the right kinds of things? I think one of the challenges for FORA is we're very spread out. There's no obvious place for a center. There are multiple jurisdictions on it. The one town that seemed to be relevant was they said there were 121 neighborhoods in this particular town in Florida that had been identified. We probably need to think about what are the neighborhood centers we're going to end up with in FORA that are really going to make the kind of vibrant community we'd like. One of the things that I thought was one of the catchphrases of the colloquium was describing a group that was having trouble is they couldn't figure out how to share the toys in the sandbox. I think that's the challenge for us is how do we share the toys in the sandbox, and there were some great techniques that came out to work us in that direction. So looking forward to the dialogue that will result from this. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Any other comments by members of the board?
Yeah, just one excellent, and Victoria really does deserve great credit, particularly for helping us wrangle together all of these great speakers. One of the things that I heard from several speakers that I think is going to be important for us to struggle with, this sort of segueing from Mayor Camp's comments, is incrementalism or phasing, and that is going to be a hard struggle to try and figure that out. But I think part of our problem is that nothing has happened other than one big box retail area, for the most part, and a scattershot of small developments by Veterans Transition Center, a nonprofit, of course, a big success here with CSUMB, but that was 15 years ago. So we need to build some more incremental pieces, but we need to figure out how to resolve some of the tensions between land use jurisdictions and who gets the next increment and who benefits from it. If we don't figure that out as a FORA board, probably something is going to happen. Well, it is happening out in East Garrison. But if you look back at the plans, East Garrison, the place where we want the first increment of development, 4 miles from the nearest grocery store, 2 miles from the nearest public transit, is that the place we would have chosen back in 1997 to do the very first thing? It just happened to us, brought to us by the market and circumstances. So I'm just hoping that we collectively can kind of grab the bull by the horns and work out these tensions between land use jurisdictions to figure out how to do the next increment in a way that benefits everybody involved so that we can get to the increment after that. So I think this is a great quote and will give us some ideas along those lines. So thank you, President Ochoa, for suggesting.
Okay. I just want to say I thank President Ochoa and CSUMB and his leadership for bringing this forward. I was there at that meeting a year ago, and I was one of the ones that said, what are you talking about? I was. But that's why you're the president of this wonderful college. And I really appreciate your leadership. And FORA, the FORA team, for assisting, and particularly the subcommittee of Virginia and Gail and Jane, and I think Tom was over there too. I started from the get-go, but I they did a lot more work than I did, and I just really appreciate them putting it together. And I think you guys did put a world-class discussion together, world-class individuals, and they came and shared a lot of insight for us. Having said all that, I think FORA, I don't want to be the wet blanket, but I think FORA needs to stay in their lane. FORA does not own any land. So when we start talking about how we're going to implement these policies, how we're going to implement these walkable developments and these walkable cities, I don't know how you really get there. Sitting here on FORA board, I don't know how you get there. If there's any board members that are not land use jurisdictions, you don't own any land, then I expect my citizens want you to put some skin in the game. If you want to determine what goes on their land, then you guys need to pony up some money and figure out a way to pay for potholes in my town. If you want to say my town don't need density, my territory don't need whatever we want to do. If you want to determine that, then you need to put skin in the game. And I say that with respect. So I just think at the end of the day, that's not our responsibility to try to talk about FORA as one whole entity where this board is going to say, where's the next development? Where the authority come in? How did you really get there? So we need to concentrate on what we do have authority of. And as we gear out of this, as we work our way up the next 6 years, as the shutdown of FORA comes about, we need to make sure we have done our job. Instead of just concentrating over the next couple of years on what's the best development, when we have no jurisdiction over development, except consistency. So we talk about 15 years. It's been 15 years, and it's things that we have not done as a FORA board. And when we talk about kids need to come together and need to share the toys, what toys are we talking about sharing? So those are my comments. I think we're losing focus when we start talking about we're going to determine what goes on in each other's land. I like to see the pathway forward. I like to see the legality, and then we can talk about it. That's just my comments, Chair. Well, as long as we stay focused, we'll.
Well, no, I appreciate Councilman Oglesby's comments, because I think it gives me an opportunity to emphasize a point. What I hope we can get out of this experience of the colloquium. In some ways, this reminds me of the position I'm in when I'm as a president, which is I do have the authority to do certain things, mostly to stop things. Just like FORA has the authority to stop some things. But I don't really have any authority to make the faculty do anything they want to, that they don't want to do. So when I actually try to promote certain courses of action in a proactive way, I have to use, persuasion, collaborative, convening strategies, and that's kind of the position that FORA could choose to be in. Right now, FORA, yes, if we look at FORA in a very different way, it's just an authority that gets to say yay or nay on things that originate elsewhere. But it also is a forum that brings together all of these different community stakeholders. And so there's an opportunity to use this forum to develop a shared vision, which can then inform the independent activities of the various municipalities. In fact, somebody pointed out, and they're right, that this is a version of the collective impact strategies that the nonprofit sector and the foundations now are turning to, which is how do you get organizations that are independent, very jealous of their turf, to actually collaborate when you know that certain problems that they're trying to deal separately really can only be solved collaboratively, so together. The fundamental reality is that the region is an economic unit, and so people work and live in ways that are that are completely transparent to the boundaries between our different municipalities, and that's the commonality that we have. Is we're all subject to the same common fate to the region in terms of its economic prosperity. So we have to find a way to develop the kind of vision that we can all buy into, and then use that to inform our independent actions in our different, jurisdictions. And I think that we can get there.
Yeah, and I think that collaboration is evident in a lot of the things that we do already. The regional transportation plan is a perfect example of how the equal parts of our jurisdictions are working towards accomplishing the goal of making through the area without impacting CSUMB, without impacting Marina, without impacting Seaside, and keep commerce going. One of the things I really liked about the colloquium was the way it brought us back to reality, what the real issues are. We hear so much about, FORA hasn't done anything, it's dead in the water, it's useless, it's this, it's that. But then you go into the world of port reuse, defense communities reuse, and you find out, oh gosh, FORA isn't an exception in that regard. It's what's going on, and it's because of the leftover debris, let's call it, that wasn't taken care of adequately at the very beginning. These barracks and all these things that need to be removed should have been removed as a project in the very beginning and enabled these communities to move forward. And when you go to the defense communities and you talk about, well, who are the leaders of base reuse? Who are they point to? They point to FORA. FORA is the leader, the innovator, and the spearhead for base reuse. Well acknowledged. We just talked about Fred Muir and the work he's done throughout the nation on base reuse. Michael Hulemart is well known as an expert in the defense community reuse. The FORA plan is a model plan. And I think this colloquium really went a long way to really setting the tone for what FORA is, has done, and will do. Now, it's up to us to make sure that we accomplish the tasks that we set in front of us. And each of us, Marina, Seaside, the county, all the other jurisdictions affected, have plans. We have goals. And we will accomplish those plans and goals. I know that Seaside is very aggressively pursuing those. And one of those is the Surplus 2, where I think that synergy between the CSUMB and startups and that mixed use is going to happen, because that's what we have decided, that's what we wanted, that's in our strategic plan. And it's not something new to us. It's something we've been talking about for years. Now, economies, recessions, doing away of redevelopment, all those things are stumbling blocks, but they won't keep us from our goal, which is to turn it into that vibrant community that doesn't really have borders. I don't want to see a border between CSUMB and Seaside. I want to see it look like it's the same place, so that we can all live in that community and enjoy what we have here. But we have to recognize that there has to be work done. That even if you have a very creative company or a very creative, innovative idea, each one of these things needs a physical plan, needs a place to have an identity, whether it's a building, a loft, a series of buildings, but it does need to be developed. And that's what we're in the business of, is providing those options of space for those opportunities. And we're ready to do it. We're ready to do it right now. And I'm so happy to work with Dr. Ochoa on all this, and CSUMB as a partner.
Thank you. Victoria.
I just have one quick follow-up. I think that we're very lucky also, there were so many great messages, and thank you, Bill, for pointing out some of the key ones as well. One of the things I learned was this whole idea that nothing moves forward unless people want it to move forward. And that we can try and get it to move forward, but we really have to have enough momentum that is from all sectors in order for it to feel like the right thing to go forward with. And there's a silver lining is we might not have finished something that everyone could get behind. And the fact is there's at least two legal mechanisms in the base reuse plan. One is the consistency determination. The other is what was called in the base reuse plan the design guidelines. What we learned today, actually, is that whole idea of design guidelines, in fact, is almost outdated, because now the notion of zoning regulations has been so advanced by these new tools with form-based codes, new computer tools, et cetera, that we can actually take what normally was a split between the simplicity of zoning, the kind of too simplistic, too squishy type tool of zoning, and the very detailed split of the design regs where you put that one slide of you don't go to a restaurant and order something that's 3/4 of an inch thick. You actually describe it, because otherwise how do you know what you're going to get? So the idea that you could actually, now we have the tools to go ahead and complete what the base reuse plan, the legal requirements the base reuse plan has, to better describe what we want. We've already got the basic tools from all the jurisdictions, and we can go ahead and add that layer of detail through the tools that were described today. And that's one of the legal and just industry tools that will get us where we want to go into a plan that we can all get behind the implementation of. We got behind the plan itself. Now we have to figure out how to implement it. So I'm very hopeful, Ian. As Dr. Ochoa, and people kept mentioning the anchor. We have the anchor, so we're very lucky to have such a success story in the university so far.
Yes, I think it's just for everyone. I didn't point this out, we were talking earlier, but I thought it was particularly noteworthy that in addition to having so many elected officials in the room and decision makers, we also had representatives for folks that are advocates for the open space. We had folks from the Native American community, we had folks from Ministerial Alliance, we had folks from the Latino community, we had representation from all segments of the region that were actively participating. We didn't get quite as much support from the Monterey Herald that I thought we were going to get. We tried it. I know Dr. Ochoa staff tried. We did get a lot of help from the Monterey County Weekly. We got a lot of help from the Pinecone. We got folks that really took the time, and the KION and the others came this week. And we did hear lots of noise. In fact, we had the half a dozen folks show up today after they saw on KION complaining they didn't see anything about it in the Herald. So I'm just hopeful that it's important everybody to hear that we have a broad-based attendance. There were well over 200 folks yesterday, 175 today. So clearly the message got out. I was difficult to track. I'd be really happy if we got 150, but we far exceeded that number. And I think it contributes to the work of practice.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all for the comments that you made reference to colloquium. Remember, this is step one of a long journey, a long, difficult journey to get to doing what we need to do. So, thanks very much. Next on the agenda, moving along, hopefully a public comment period. Any member of the public wishing to address the board may do so now. You've got 3 minutes on any item not on the agenda.
My name is Lillian Stone. I'm the Executive Director of the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. I guess it's my misunderstanding that this is supposed to be the community part of the meeting. And I think the first order of business should be to include the local impacted community in all of these decisions that have to be made here, because most of those people were not here and not invited here. I was a government employee on this base. My husband is a veteran. I started working to bring the communities together back in 1992, 93, 94, and every year after that. I have been to the Pentagon. I have been on the Munitions Dialogue Committee. I have been a Northern District Representative to the ATSDR. I have been involved across this country bringing attention to the plight that we've had to suffer here because of the base closure. We are still suffering here. There are no jobs for ordinary people. The jobs that come in are being taken up by people who do not know what has happened here in our community. Our community is divided, distracted. The community is still out there waiting and suffering and wondering, when will the time come? I'm tired of people coming up to me saying, how are you doing? How's your family? How's your husband? Knowing darn well how we're doing. trying to make it from whatever paycheck to paycheck with nobody really being concerned. I know that if people were concerned, we would have more events like this for our local community and not just for people that are already well endowed. And you need to hear from us. We have taken place in all of these community meetings about reuse, about everything. We have come to them, we have expressed our concerns, we have written letters, we have sent everything that we could. And to be standing here now, listening to all of the congratulations that are being done, and just being discounted, like you said, the Monterey Herald didn't do his job. It feels bad when you're not included the way you should. Our community is feeling bad about what has happened. We're talking about 20 years down the road, 20 long years, not only in the economic situation, but in the health arena, where we're suffering from the smoke impacts and all of that. All of these things need to be discussed and taken seriously by everyone that's in this room, around this table, and in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board? Seeing none, the public comment period. Oh, I'm sorry. Carlos. The quick and there's a hungry.
Carlos Ramos, representing C-Jobs, Coalition for Jobs, Opportunity, and Business in Seaside. Mr. Chair and board members, congratulations on a job well done yesterday and today. Takes a lot of effort, a lot of planning, a lot of resources, but thank you. President Ochoa, thank you very much for, yes, turning someone who was a little skeptical about a year ago to a believer. There's a saying, hablando se entiende. In talking, there's understanding. So I appreciate the vision, and I appreciate all of the effort for you hosting this along with your entire staff. Andre, I saw him working hard. God bless you and thank you. Board Member Beach, God bless you. And thank you for a lot of hard work and your committee. It doesn't just happen. It's like that proverbial and perennial curtain. Sit down, goes up, goes down, everybody claps and goes home. But there's a lot that happens before, during, and after. So thank you. There were two takeaways. The first one was enlightening by the modeling tools, the form code modeling data for place and design. But it occurred to me, we need to work on form code modeling data for job creation and revenue. It's great to see how things will look nice, but what will it generate in terms of jobs and revenue? Got to keep it balanced, folks. Another takeaway, and this was through the panelist Mary Jo Waits, I believe it was panel 2, where she talked about almost getting a ticket, but then there was a conversation with a police officer. That officer was a resident of Seaside, California. So for the comments, Mayor Rubio and Mayor Pro Tem, thank you for those comments. Appreciate them both. That was a message that leads me to a fourth E, and that's the empowerment of community. There was a message there. We could talk about the environment, we could talk about education, we could talk about the economy, but in empowering the community, it came from your panelists. That, I propose, that is our fourth E. And without that, those charades are nothing.
30 seconds.
The charades. The charade and the charade. Okay, I said it. Yeah, I said it. But in order to reach out, not only to reach out, but to reach in to the community.
10 seconds.
Community empowerment, the fourth E. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Mr. Charade.
Any other member of the public wishing to address the board of directors? Going once, going twice. Okay, public comment period is closed. Next, we have the consent agenda. Yes, yesterday the FORA staff received a veteran cemetery land transfer agreement from the state, and the agreement has to be executed immediately. It should have been done yesterday. All we need is a determination of 2/3 of the board. This constitutes an urgency agreement, and we can add it to the consent agenda.
Motion to include.
Okay, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, we'll include that in the consent agenda. We have a consent agenda that has that item plus the adopting resolution acknowledging service of Monterey City Manager Fred Muir. Any members wishing to pull the item for discussion? Yes.
Just a quick comment on the schedule for meetings next year. We have the schedule for FORA board, the executive committee, the administrative committee, and on the page that talks about the FORA board, down below, it has, if I can find it. Thank you. You got where I was going. Yeah, just a whole thing talking about the executive committee, which I'm just not quite sure what. Page 7. The bottom paragraph, we'll just switch it up. Yeah, thank you. Just thought that's going to be the public document.
So we'll delete that portion?
Well, correct it.
Okay.
We'll correct it.
Will be corrected.
Will be corrected. Okay, any other member of the board wishing to pull an item for discussion, questions? Out to the public, any member of the public wishing to pull any items? Saying none, I
Move consent.
Okay, Mayor Gunter made the motion, the second is? Ralph? Oh, I'm sorry, Ralph, you made the motion, we have 2 points.
I second it.
Mayor Gunter is the second.
Second.
Okay, for the consent agenda, the motion, maker of the motion, Mayor Rubio, second, Mayor Gunter. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries unanimously. Now we're good. Thank you very much.
That's the end of that.
Next, under old business, we have the capital improvement program review, phase 3 study authorization. Jonathan, I believe you have this.
Members of the board, pulling up here a bubble chart, just showing where we've been with Economic and Planning Systems Capital Improvement Review Program and where the recommended action for today. So far, just to recap a little bit of our background, in August 2010, the board authorized staff to issue a request for proposals, and through that selective process, the board entered into contract with Economic Planning Systems to do a capital improvement program review. That was phase 1. That was initiated in 2010. The results of that study was a board-approved 27% developer fee reduction. And then during phase 2, which was authorized immediately after that initial reduction, the board completed, EPS completed a formula and a process, and the board resulted in a board-approved 23.6% developer fee reduction. And as a result of some of the feedback from the capital improvement program from this year, some additional scope items have been added to the phase 3 study. So today's recommendation would first be to approve a $25,000 augmentation to the line item in the FORA budget for the financial consultant. And then second, to authorize the executive officers to execute the contract amendment number 8 with Economic and Planning Systems to complete the phase 3 study, not to exceed $75,000. And I'm available if there's any questions about the staff report or the recommended.
Any questions by members of the board? Seeing none, after the public, any questions by members of the public? Comments? Seeing none, back to the board. Here, take a motion, please.
I'll make a motion. Second.
Okay, Mayor Gunter made the motion to approve the fiscal year 13-14 budget augmentation and authorize the board of officers to execute the contract amendment number 8. The second is Mayor Rubio. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, Preston Park Management Agreement Extension of Alliance Communities. Robert?
What we have in front of the board is an extension of the existing Preston Park Management Agreement. Previously, in October, a report was brought to the board regarding the management study. We had essentially 2 findings that will be focused on going forward with the new contract. One is to provide a tenant handbook, and the other was to have quarterly aggregation of data and financial reporting, and also in practicing, what we'll do is have monthly financial coordination meetings to tighten up the reporting and tracking of data. I remind everyone that in the management report, we had maintained almost zero vacancy factors, and each of the revenue dispersals each month was on time and addressing the financial targets of the enterprise. And so what we're recommending is that the contract be extended, and the action of the board is to authorize the executive officer to sign the contract extension.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions by members of the board? Seeing none, out to the public. Any questions by members of the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we need the motion with Mayor Rubio, and the second was Supervisor Parker. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed?
No.
Okay, we have two noes. Councilmember Morton and Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell. This is our first vote. We'll bring it back in January for the second vote as our normal custom. Thank you very much. Next, we have the board initiatives, measures K&M. Michael, take it away.
Yes, Chair Healy and members of the board, this is simply the final act that the board is required to do with regard to measures K&M, which is to receive certification election results from the Monterey County Elections Department. We did receive your board packet that does have a copy of the certification, and then to extend the election legal services contract with Steve Churchwell. Authority Council, Don Giffen is here to accept that if you time to have any questions about it, but simply stated that during the course of the conduction of this election, there were a number of legal questions that were posed and challenges in the courts, and as a consequence of that, the board did authorize John to continue to use Steve Churchwell on those individual cases. That required a scope adjustment, which John has negotiated with Mr. Churchwell, and this is the conclusion of that negotiation.
I do have a question about that. I understand, I guess we're being asked to approve an additional $11,000. I understand the past work, but in the scope it also, and in the second part it says also future legal services, and I'm just, doesn't seem to me that there's anything happening currently and in the future, and those other cases are, I thought were pretty well taken care of, so I guess I'm wondering what the future refers to.
Understand. We did have, during the course of the election process, we had 4 lawsuits. One of them continues the Bowden case is on appeal. And there was somewhat of an overrun on his services, which to me was his services were very valuable. I mean, we got through the process of the 4 lawsuits and a lot of novel questions that frankly FORA had never dealt with before as an election officer. And so one other item too, really very important item that does need to be resolved is the county bill. And I do anticipate considerable help from Mr. Churchwell on that. I think that will be a significant help during next, well, after we get the bill. So I think given the $11,000 increase, I think it's rather minimal given the value that we provided and how would FORA emerge from the election without too much in the way of overwhelming legal expenses.
Through the chair, do we have a sense for the timing and how onerous the Bogan case appeal
I don't think the Bogan case is going to be terribly long. That's going to be.
Most of the count is billed.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the help is really going to be. I think
well,
the value
to vote against this.
Okay, any other questions by members of the board? Out of the public, any questions by members of the public? Back to the board, entertain a motion, please.
I'll make a motion.
A motion by Mayor Gunter and second by Councilmember Ian Oglesby. And the motion is to receive certification of election results and extend the election legal services contract. All in favor, signify by saying, any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on a roll. Thank you. New business, adopt 2014 FORA legislative agenda. Michael.
Yes, Chair Edelin, the board members have had an opportunity by now, I know, to review the draft legislative agenda. The legislative committee did meet and review the items that are included in this agenda. Many of them are consistent with items that the board has gone through in the past. The legislative committee asked for some rather specific language about baseline mitigation and building removal impacts that have now been included, which are particularly important to address the recent announcement by President Ochoa of the dollars that they will have to start doing some building removal, and the fact that we are soon to re-engage with the Office of Economic Adjustment about their grant for business planning dollars. The first item on the grant on this legislative agenda is about the Veterans Cemetery. The update here is to focus attention on the next phases of the Veterans Cemetery and to confirm our ongoing support. In fact, earlier today, the board approved executing an agreement for the transfer. Under item B, for the National Monument, this is a highly important item for the board and continuing legislative advocacy for both dollars and for how this monument helps us support. Under augmented water supply, this is primarily to continue working with NCWD to ensure that they complete their contractual obligation for supplemental water supply. In addition, it's our job to coordinate with all of the resource agencies in the area on water issues. Along those lines, the water bond effort, the legislative committee is recommending that we support the water bond effort that provides services here in the Monterey Bay region. It's not clear yet exactly what the final water bond is going to look like, so that's why this proposed position is sort of provide direct input to adopt a proposal that will support our area, so that'll be regularly monitored and reviewed both with the board and the executive committee. Under transportation improvement, it's been our ongoing position to coordinate with TAMC and the other jurisdictions on transportation improvements, which includes everything from the multiple corridor to 8th Street, it's an important item to get completed, to the work that we still have to do on South Boundary Road and other places, as well as our collection of revenues that will go to TAMC for other roads off the former Fort Ord. So that coordination effort continues. Under building removal, I mentioned that earlier, and the position here is to continue to work with CSU, and we heard a lot about that earlier today and yesterday about the importance of continuing that. Under public safety officer training, working with the County of Monterey and MCC, it's our obligation to continue to do this kind of coordination under the agreement that we entered into 9 years ago with Monterey Peninsula College, and we'd like to continue that. The Habitat Conservation Plan, I can't say enough about how important this is, but I've done that for 14 years. So it gets increasingly more frustrating and difficult, but it remains costly. We are getting ready to publish a document, and there will be a few issues that this board will need to advocate, and we're hoping for Assemblymember Stone and Senator Bonning's assistance when we get to that point, because we do expect some issues with fish and wildlife at the state, not at the federal level. Under reuse financing, this board has challenged us to figure out some innovative ways of financing for different kinds of reuse. We are looking also at redevelopment financing replacements that the state of California is considering, such as industrial development bonds, and working with others in the state on creating financial mechanisms that then cities of Marina, Seaside, the county, and others can use for their work on Fort Ord. And then finally, the legislative cooperation. We meet always with all of our colleagues in the county, TAMC, to make sure that our legislative agenda is not in conflict with other legislative agendas. So, Chair, that's the legislative agenda for the coming year.
Thank you very much, Michael. Any questions by members of the board? Yes, please.
Two questions. This seems to be focused specifically just on the state. I don't see reference to federal legislation. Do we have a separate one that's for the federal?
There's both federal and state. In the case of the baseline mitigation building removal. We're working with the Department of Defense Office of Economic Adjustment and the Economic Development Administration. Under transportation improvements, we consistently work with our federal agencies, TAMC and FORA. In fact, have been joined for federal activity a couple of times in the past. With respect to the national monument, there will definitely be direct interface with the Bureau of Land Management, which is named under item B. And of course, at the Veteran Cemetery, each of our last 2 years, the legislative mission that the federal government has worked directly with the Veterans Administration and General Zuchecki and Congressman Barr's office. So we have a number of items where we will be working directly with federal issues.
Thank you. I guess it was under the under baseline mitigation and building removal impacts.
Yes.
We appear to only be lobbying for state funds.
Right. If you look at the second paragraph, you see the Office of Economic Adjustment and the U.S. Economic Development Administration grant application.
Right. Okay. So that answers that. And then on the third page of the legislative agenda, at the bottom under transportation, I think with all that we've been hearing today about local communities, it might be prudent under the third bullet at the very bottom. Advocates for approved regional improvements to maintain traffic flow and funding for transit improvements, we might say, and active transportation, which then includes your pedestrian and cycle bicycles.
And active transportation?
Yes.
Any other questions? Yes, Tom.
Yeah, I'd like to just request one very small clarifying revision on the bottom of page 2 of this, page 44, I believe, in the board packet. In the paragraph labeled benefits, where it reads development permitted under the base reuse plan, I'd suggest we change the word permitted to planned, because we haven't actually permitted at this point an amount of development that goes beyond the 6,600 acre feet of groundwater. I just want to be clear that it's the plan that takes us beyond that, not existing permit.
Other comments or questions by board members? Jordan?
So I just wanted to, on the topic of the water bond, Assemblymember Stone urged for there to be a hearing on the Central Coast. So for board members and the public, there will be a hearing December 17th, Tuesday, from noon to 2 at the Seaside City Council chambers. Assembly members will be present and hear from a panel of experts, and that's an opportunity for the public, for board members to come and express the importance of the Central Coast being included in the water bond. So I just wanted to make sure you
Our executive officer will be speaking there also. Other comments by board members? Saying that out to the public, any questions or comments by members of the public? Back to the board, entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Okay, we've got Mayor Rubio made the motion, and who's second?
Second.
And is that with those two changes?
Including the two changes made earlier.
One change would be under item E, would add and active transportation under the third bullet. And if it's all right with Director Moore, development projected under the base reuse plan.
That's fine.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? The motion is to adopt the 2014 Forward Reuse Authority legislative agenda. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we have the Executive Officer's report. Michael?
Every item in the Executive Officer's report is information, and I know all the board members read it. We have one item that I want to highlight, and that one item under the Executive Officer's report is the Finance Committee report. And under Finance Committee, you'll note, I believe that's item 9E. Under 9E, you'll note that the Finance Committee, Finance Committee made a determination to broaden our banking work under the minutes, and as a consequence of that, the FORA staff is going to be working with the third bank to make sure that we spread around our banking services.
You got too much money to put in one bag. Any questions of our Executive Officer with regard to his Executive Officer report? Board members? Out to the public, any questions about members of the public? Okay. Next, we have items from members. Any items from the members you'd like to disseminate to everybody present? Okay. I guess we will be closing the open session, reconvening closed session. I believe some of the public hopefully will come back. It should be a fairly short closed session. We've asked our attorney to keep it as short as possible. It's been a long day. So we are adjourning right now. If the public would just leave the room for a few minutes, we'll have our closed session. You have a seating area right outside. We'll try and make it as quick as we possibly can.
We haven't been leaving there. Nobody got beat up. So you guys can go live in the parking lot on your iPads. Yeah, he's going to go live on his iPad in the parking lot with the camera.
Take care.
Yeah, unless we can go in the parking lot and I can listen to this on the way home on my iPad. Sure, even if you go down in the parking lot and listen to it live on my iPad, you can be on camera. I don't need to be here.
One heck of a year. We've gotten a lot accomplished. I think 2014 is going to be even better. Thank you very much.